They always said in Copper Ridge that some stories are too wild to believe, even when they're staring you right in the face. But on a freezing October morning when the mist clung to the grass like a burial shroud, and the sky hadn't yet decided whether it wanted to snow or cry, everything those old-timers thought they knew about miracles was about to be proven wrong. Dylan Cross, a worn-out ranch hand with calloused palms and more regrets than dollar bills, was making his usual rounds along the broken fence lines of the Whitmore Ranch when he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind dragging itself through the pines, but then it came again, a low, ragged groan that sounded too full of pain to be anything but alive. He hesitated, every instinct telling him to mind his business, to keep walking, to not invite more trouble into a life already teetering on the edge, but something pulled him toward the tree line anyway. The sound led him into the woods, past frost-crusted brush and fallen leaves that cracked beneath his boots, until he stepped into a small clearing, dominated by an ancient oak tree, roots gnarled like the hands of time itself. And there, chained to its trunk, lay the biggest horse he had ever seen. Coal-black, massive, at least 18 hands tall, even collapsed as he was, and wrapped in chains so tight they'd carved into his flesh. Blood had dried beneath the iron. His breaths came out in soft clouds of steam, stiff and shaky, like each one might be his last. A stained scrap of paper was tied to one of the chains. Dylan's fingers trembled as he unfolded it. His name is Goliath. I can't take care of him. He's too wild, too much. Maybe someone else can save him. No name, no explanation. Just abandonment. Dylan could have walked away. God knows he should have. He didn't have money for hay, let alone a half-dead giant of a horse who looked like he'd given up on the world. But when Goliath lifted his head and met Dylan's eyes, deep amber, full of pain but not anger, something flickered there. Not a plea, not even trust. Just a question. Are you going to leave me too? And against every piece of logic he had, Dylan whispered, I'm getting you out of here. Don't know how, but I will. He ran back to the ranch, grabbed bolt cutters, a hacksaw, pliers, anything he thought might help, and hurried back before that flicker in Goliath's eyes could disappear. The chains were old but strong, frozen stiff from the cold. Each cut sent a dull metallic clang echoing through the woods. Goliath flinched at first but didn't fight. He just breathed, slow and heavy, as if he'd already decided whether he lived or died depended entirely on this stranger kneeling beside him. Dylan talked while he worked, not because the horse could understand, but because it helped steady his own hands. He talked about the barn, about the dusty stall no horse had stood in for a decade, about the field that still remembered the sound of hooves. It took over an hour to break the lock and unwind the chains without cutting deeper into his skin. When the final loop hit the frozen ground, Goliath didn't run. He didn't even try to stand. He just lay there, trembling, eyes fixed on Dylan like he was waiting for what came next. Come on, big guy, Dylan breathed, pressing a hand to the horse's neck. Let's get you home. It should have been a 15-minute walk back to the ranch, but Goliath could only take a few steps before his legs buckled. So they moved slowly. 10 steps, rest, 10 more. Rest again? The sun crept into the sky, turning the frost into glittering glass. Branches snapped under the horse's hooves. More than once, Dylan wondered if he was prolonging an inevitable end. But every time Goliath swayed, he would catch himself, lift his head, and take another step. Nearly 2 hours later, when they finally emerged from the woods and the Whitmore barn came into view, something changed in the horse. His ears pricked forward. His neck straightened. He stood taller, as if he understood this was not another place to die, but a place to live. Dylan settled him into the barn, patched the broken boards, laid clean straw, and stayed with him long into the night. When Benjamin Whitmore, owner of the ranch, 72, gruff as unsharpened steel, returned from town and saw the massive horse standing silent in his barn, he didn't curse or shout like Dylan expected. He just walked up to Goliath, ran a rough hand along his scarred neck, and said quietly, "Some things are worth the trouble." The vet, Dr. Patricia Vance, came the next morning. Her verdict was blunt. He's starved, dehydrated, infected, and weak. If you don't feed him slowly and carefully, his heart could stop. This will take time, money, effort, and even then he might not make it. Dylan didn't hesitate. Then we do it right. And so began the slow, delicate ritual of bringing Goliath back to life, Small meals every few hours. Gentle cleaning of wounds, quiet conversation in the dim barn light. As the days passed, the scarred giant began to heal. His eyes grew brighter. His coat, once dull and rough, started to shine. More surprising than the physical change was the way people changed around him. Word spread through Copper Ridge like spring thunder. They came in trucks, on horseback, on foot. Neighbors, strangers, kids, veterans, broken souls who'd lost faith in themselves. They came for the horse who survived, who trusted, who forgave. A little girl named Lisa, who hadn't spoken since her parents' divorce, walked up to Goliath one Saturday, trembling like a leaf. He lowered his massive head, and she whispered something into his ear no one else could hear. After that, she came back every weekend, barefoot in the summer grass, smiling again. Marcus, a tough 17-year-old, known more for trouble than kindness, started working at the ranch just to earn extra cash, he said. But one evening, Dylan found him sitting in the stall, Goliath's great head in his lap, as the boy admitted things he hadn't told anyone, about fights, fear, feeling invisible. Goliath listened, silent and still, as if absorbing every word. Even Dylan changed. The man who once counted pennies and slept in his boots in case the world fell apart started laughing again. He woke up before dawn not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He had a reason, a purpose. And every time Goliath nudged him with that velvet soft nose, it was like the universe whispering, "See, you were never meant to give up." By spring, Goliath was strong enough to run, not just walk, but run. Dylan watched, breath caught in his throat, as the black horse thundered across the pasture, mane flying like spilled ink against the sky. He wasn't the dying creature under the oak tree anymore. He was a force, a heartbeat, a miracle, and still, the story didn't end there. One day, a family arrived with their son, Kevin, a 12-year-old boy with cerebral palsy who had never walked on his own. They didn't come looking for miracles, just a moment of peace. But Goliath walked to the fence, studied Kevin for a long moment, then did something no one expected. He lay down in the grass beside the boy's wheelchair. It took time, careful hands, and tears, but Kevin climbed onto his back, and when Goliath stood, carrying him gently around the pasture, Kevin laughed, a sound bright and clear as church bells. When he slid back into his wheelchair, he hugged Goliath's neck and whispered, "Thank you for letting me be tall." That night, Dylan sat at the kitchen table across from Benjamin and said, "This is bigger than us, bigger than a ranch. We could help people, really help them." And that's how the Goliath Recovery Ranch was born. Now, people come from miles away, not because they believe in magic, but because they believe in what they've seen with their own eyes. A broken horse who refused to quit, a broken man who found purpose in saving him, and a community that learned sometimes the thing we rescue ends up rescuing us. And if you're still watching, let us know in the comments where you're from. If this story reached your heart, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because in this world, hope doesn't always ride in on a white horse. Sometimes it comes chained to an oak tree, waiting for someone brave enough to say, "Come on, boy. Let's go home."